15 seconds after launch, a hypersonic missile would already be traveling faster than a rifle bullet, crossing hundreds of kilometers before most radars could fully track it. Now ask yourself this: what happens when the United States still does not have one ready, while its rivals already do? This video uncovers why America's first operational hypersonic weapon has missed yet another deadline, and why that delay matters far beyond a single missile system. If this program succeeds, it reshapes deterrence, compresses decision-making time for presidents, and restores a sense of balance in an arms race already underway. If it fails, or keeps slipping, the strategic gap between the United States and its competitors widens at precisely the moment when speed has become the decisive currency of military power. Hypersonic weapons are not just faster missiles. They collapse warning times, strain command systems, and raise escalation risks across multiple regions at once. The United States entered the hypersonic race later than its main competitors, but with far greater financial firepower. Since 2018, Washington has poured more than $12 billion into hypersonic research, testing, and deployment. The Army's contribution is the long-range hypersonic weapon known operationally as Dark Eagle. It is designed to deliver a conventional warhead at speeds exceeding Mach 5, flying lower than traditional ballistic missiles and maneuvering unpredictably in the atmosphere. Yet despite that investment, the Army has now missed its fielding deadline 3 times. The first target date, September 2023, passed quietly. Another slipped by in late 2024. Most recently, the Army acknowledged that its stated goal of fielding the weapon by the end of 2025 was not met. The soldiers are trained, the unit is activated, the launches exist. The missile itself, however, is still not operational. This delay is not about a single broken component. Lockheed Martin's glide body, developed jointly with the Navy, has flown successfully in several tests. Instead, the challenge lies in integrating an entirely new class of weapon into existing command systems while meeting safety, sustainment, and readiness standards. Hypersonic systems place extraordinary thermal stress on materials, demand precise navigation at extreme speeds, and require flawless coordination between sensors, launch crews, and command authorities. The first operational battery alone is projected to cost approximately $2.7 billion, including missiles, infrastructure, and support equipment. The full Army hypersonic program carries a price tag of roughly $10.4 billion. These numbers matter because they reflect a bet that hypersonics are not optional but essential to future deterrence. Russia and China made that bet earlier. Moscow has already used hypersonic weapons in combat, launching Kinzhal missiles during strikes in Ukraine. While their battlefield impact remains debated, their psychological and strategic effects are not. China, meanwhile, has deployed the DF-17, pairing a hypersonic glide vehicle with a medium-range ballistic missile. Beijing has tested fractional orbital bombardment concepts that further complicate missile defense planning. Against that backdrop, the absence of a US-fielded system is more than symbolic. It affects alliance credibility, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, where deterrence relies heavily on the perception that the United States can respond quickly and decisively to high-end threats. Hypersonic weapons are seen by planners as a way to hold time-sensitive, heavily defended targets at risk without crossing the nuclear threshold. The Army attempted to signal progress in December when it announced the activation of its first hypersonic battery. The announcement described the milestone as a major advance in capability. What it did not clarify at the time was that the missiles themselves were not yet ready for operational use. The distinction matters because it highlights a growing gap between institutional momentum and technical reality. Oversight bodies have also raised concerns. As of October, the Pentagon's own test office reported that it had not conducted a full end-to-end operational assessment of the system. Without that data, evaluators cannot yet judge whether the weapon is effective, survivable, or suitable under combat conditions. In other words, even once fielded, the system may enter service with unanswered questions about how it performs in real-world scenarios. This situation places pressure on the Pentagon's broader acquisition philosophy. Defense leadership has emphasized faster fielding and reduced bureaucracy, arguing that traditional procurement timelines are incompatible with modern threats. Hypersonics was supposed to prove that speed was possible. Instead, they are exposing how difficult it is to compress development cycles without compromising reliability. Now consider the first scenario. What if the system reaches operational status in early 2026, as the Army now projects, and performs as intended? In that case, the United States regains some strategic parity. The weapon would provide commanders with a rapid, non-nuclear strike option against high-value targets, complicating adversary planning and reinforcing deterrence. Allies would see tangible evidence that US investments translate into deployable capability, not just prototypes. But there is a second scenario. What if delays continue, or operational testing reveals limitations that restrict how the weapon can be used? In that case, the US risks normalizing a capability gap at the highest levels of conventional warfare. Adversaries may calculate that they can exploit compressed decision timelines, believing Washington lacks equivalent tools to respond proportionally. The consequences extend beyond the battlefield. Hypersonic delays influence arms control debates, missile defense investments, and crisis stability calculations. They also affect budget priorities, as resources diverted to fix one program inevitably come from others. In South Asia, where missile development already feeds regional competition, hypersonics could accelerate similar pursuits. In Europe, they reshape NATO's deterrence posture against Russia. Globally, they reinforce a trend toward faster, more automated warfare where human decision-makers have less time to intervene. The irony is that hypersonics were meant to restore control by strengthening deterrence. Instead, their development underscores how fragile control becomes when technology advances faster than institutions can adapt. Every missed deadline chips away at confidence, not just in a weapon system, but in the ability of complex organizations to deliver under pressure. As the United States moves into 2026, the question is no longer whether hypersonics matter. That debate is over. The question is whether America can translate money, talent, and intent into operational reality before strategic competitors define the rules of the next era themselves. In a world where wars may be decided in minutes, delay is not neutral. It is a strategic choice with consequences, and the clock, unlike budgets and schedules, does not slip.